Press.
Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. I'm Dr. Arpita, and the topic for today's discussion is biodiesel from algae. Today, we'll discuss the various types of algae that are used for producing biodiesels, which are eco-friendly and friendly on our pocket too. So from the very word biodiesel itself, you can understand that it has got something to do with living organism. Now, before we get into that, we will first take a note of this EROI abbreviation. EROI stands for Energy Return on Investment. So this is an indicator of sustainability assessment. It is the proportion of energy produced by a given source to the energy required to produce it. So we should know how much of energy is being invested and how much is the yield. Now, when the EROI value is less than 1, or simply EROI is less than 1, it means what? It is an indicative of the fact that more energy is needed to create a fuel than is found in the fuel and co-products. What is seen here in algal biofuel is that for algal biofuels produced in open ponds or photobioreactors, the predicted EROI ranges from 0.13 to 0.71. Now, for a fuel to be a sustainable energy source, it should have an EROI greater than 3. So, this is a small piece of information that you just need to keep in mind. So let's move on to the core topic. Microalgae are important part of carbon cycle in nature, and they could utilize the carbon resource in water and soil efficiently. Algae, as we all know, are autotrophic organisms that can make their own food by virtue of the chlorophyll that are present in their body. Now, we exploit these microalgae to produce fuel. And these microalgae, they have the potential to utilize the carbon resources in water and soil extremely efficiently. So algae are organisms that grow in aquatic environments and use light and CO2 to create biomass. This is our point here. They create biomass by using light and CO2. Now see, microalgae have long been recognized as potentially good sources for biofuel production because of their relatively high oil content and rapid biomass production. These organisms, they grow very fast, they reproduce fast, and as a result, the yield of biomass is always very high. Algae have 20 to 80% oil contents that could be converted into different types of fuels. Diesel production from algae is economical and easy. Different species such as Tribonema, Eulothrix, Synedesmus, Euglena, etc. have good potential for biodiesel production. Now, it has been reported that Algal species like Tribonema, Eulothrix, Synedesmus, Euglena, and many more are there. These algal species have high potential for biodiesel production. See, uncontrolled consumption of fossil fuels means coal, petroleum, all these, I mean the non-renewable energy resources, to be more precise. So uncontrolled use or uncontrolled consumption of these fossil fuels has been on the rise following rapid development, urbanization, and typically growth of the industry. All these have led to reduced fossil energy resource reserves and causing severe deterioration of the natural environment. Now it's high time that this matter gets addressed. If this is not getting addressed as early as possible, what might happen? A day will come when there is no fuel in our hand to use. Biodiesel produced by renewable resources such as vegetable oil or animal fat is a clean and alternative to diesel fuel. Biodiesel is, as I've already told you, it is eco-friendly, it is renewable, and it is friendly on your pocket too. So this is a very bright thought now. If we just take a look at this pictorial representation of how oil is produced from algae, you will get a very clean and clear idea about the entire process. Not getting into much complication, let's take a simpler way to understand the process. First of all, you see the algal specimen here. This is your algae. These are renewable resource. They will use CO2, they will use water, and they will use sunlight or energy from the sun to produce biomass. Okay. First of all, they will produce biomass. From this biomass, oil is extracted. From the oil, the protein residues are separated and biodiesel is produced. This biodiesel gives another important byproduct. This gives us the renewable biofuel. This is renewable biofuel. This renewable biofuel is used to run automobiles. The automobiles that give out CO2 is once again used up by this algae. So this is a very important and very simple, easy cycle that gives us a clear idea about how the algae produced from the biofuel produced from algae are eco-friendly and how are they using up the CO2 that is being given out by the automobiles. Now let's get a brief idea about biofuel. Biofuel can be categorized into three types: first generation, second generation, and third generation biofuel. First generation biofuels are those biofuels that are produced from food crops. Second generations are produced from non-food crops. And the third generation ones are our topic of discussion. So basically we are talking about third generation biofuel now. The problem with these two are, see, when you are growing a food crop, it means what? The food crops are meant to be eaten. To support the exponentially growing population, you should first eat. Then you can think of fuel and all. So if you are not having enough to eat, how will you sustain yourself? So whatever crop you are growing, you should eat that. You need not cut the portion of your food and use some part of it to make fuel. So this idea is not a, uh, an extremely useful one. So our first criteria is to feed the growing population, and for which we cannot compromise with food. Second is non-food crop. See, land, the proportion of land and water on earth is 25% and 75% respectively. 3/4 of our earth is made up of water. So if more of land is used up for growing non-food crops, so this becomes a point of concern. But these algae grow in water. If you are using more and more water to grow these microorganism, it won't really matter. It won't use up the land which can be alternatively used for producing food. I mean food crops, growing food crops. So using water for growing algae is a better idea. Now we'll discuss the two most commonly used methods for algal biofuel production. One is the suspension-based open ponds, and the other is first one is the open pond system, while the other one is the enclosed photobioreactors. So one is done in open and the other is done indoor in closed area. So let's look into it one by one. See, before we do that, we must know the optimal growth conditions. Optimal growth of phototrophic microalgae requires light, CO2, water, inorganic salt, to be more precise, phosphorus, nitrogen, all these. No organism can grow without phosphorus. So phosphorus is one of the most important among the inorganic nutrients, and a proper optimum culture temperature, which should be between 15 to 30 degree Celsius. So these 5 conditions are a must for optimum growth of microalgae. So we'll talk about the first one, which is our open pond system or suspension-based open ponds. The suspension-based open ponds look somewhat like this. If you take a look at this one, this image here, you see the ponds are generally, see the ponds are generally shallow. It's not too deep. It is not like that. They are generally shallow. The reason behind this is that algae spread on the surface. They don't go deep inside and grow. They spread on the surface. And if it is too deep, sunlight won't penetrate. And without sunlight, they can't grow. So algal ponds are usually made shallow. It is dug on the ground and made, and sometimes a plastic coat is also applied. Why a plastic coat is applied? This prevents leaching of water. I mean, the water that you are using for culturing will not go and get collected as groundwater. This is prevented by coating it with a sterile plastic layer. The water should not get absorbed by the ground. So this should be kept in mind. The ponds are usually shallow, and if it is dug on the ground or on the soil, it is usually coated with a sterile plastic layer, or it is done in drums like this, tanks like this. See, these are open tanks where sun is here. These are open pond. Sunlight is here, CO2 is there, essential nutrients are mixed. Optimization of algal production, then they are harvested, filtered, dried, and oils are extracted, and biodiesel is produced. See here, the pond is designed in a raceway configuration in which a paddle wheel, look at this diagram, in this a paddle wheel, this one is a paddle wheel, aids in circulation. This paddle wheel keeps on rotating like this. The paddle wheel keeps on rotating, and as it rotates, it keeps on mixing the algal cells and the nutrients, and it doesn't allow the biomass to remain at one place, or it doesn't allow the biomass to settle at one place. So, see, it aids in circulation and mixing of the algal cells and nutrients. Now, baffles are here. This is baffle. See, baffles are here. What is the function of this baffle? The baffles in the channel guide the flow around the bends. The baffles are here. See, near the bends. The baffles are near the bends. This will guide the flow, this part. Okay, the baffle will guide the flow. It will direct the flow. Okay. Algal broth is harvested behind the paddle wheel after it has circulated through the loop. Here is the harvest point. This one. This is the harvest point. It is harvested from behind the paddle wheel. Here is the paddle wheel. The journey starts like this. It goes this way, this way. The baffles are there. It will guide. Then another baffle is here. It will keep on guiding. See? Then it comes this way. Again, it goes this way. It comes this way. Finally, here, and it is harvested. The feed is the place from where the inoculation is done. Initial culture is inoculated here. So this is the brief picture of the raceway configuration, which has paddle wheels and baffles. These are some pictures of open pond system. Here also you can see a paddle which will keep on circulating the content in the pond. This will ensure constant mixing, and it will not allow the algae or nutrients to settle at the bottom. These are pictures, all pictures of open ponds. Now, there are certain disadvantages also. And well, advantages are also there. See, among the disadvantage, what you can see here, as these are open, contamination, the chance of contamination is there. It can often be exposed to rainwater. You can't sit with an umbrella. If you are covering it, then there will be no light, no air. So rainwater problem is there. This often changes the pH of the water. Next is growth of unwanted algae. This can always happen because it is open. You cannot tell the algae that you will not grow over here. So this can always happen, that there is a chance of growth of unwanted algal specimen. So at that time, what will happen? Your work becomes double. You will have to segregate them and all the rest of it. So there are certain disadvantages, but also there are multiple advantages as well. Multiple advantages in the sense, first and foremost thing, it is extremely pocket friendly. It is not so expensive like a photobioreactor. You don't need to spend much for the light, external source of light or external source of CO2. Those things you don't need to spend for. So apart from these disadvantages, there are certain advantages also, which makes it a very suitable and useful option for uh, production of algal biofuel. Next, we'll talk about enclosed photobioreactors. In enclosed photobioreactors, what happens? These are cultivation vessels, and these have a large surface area to volume ratio. This R is of no use here. So these cultivation vessels have a large surface area to volume ratio. The medium broth is circulated through a pump where it is exposed to light for photosynthesis and then back to a reservoir. Now the point of circulation is common in both. Why is it common in both? If it is not circulated, then the algal cells will settle at one place and nutrients will also settle at one place. This should not happen. Next, see, the algal biomass is prevented from settling by maintaining a high turbulent flow within the reactor using either a mechanical pump or an airlift pump. So either a mechanical pump or an airlift pump is used to maintain turbulent flow within the reactor in order to keep the biomass in a floating and flowing condition, and ensuring that there is no settlement of the nutrient as well as the algal biomass. The culture is periodically returned to a degassing zone, an area where the algal broth is bubbled with air to remove excess oxygen. Now, this is an advantage in the open pond that since it is open, there is no uh, degassing needed here. Whatever oxygen that is being produced, it is getting dissipated in the open air. So a separate degassing procedure is not undertaken. But here, since it is a closed photobioreactor, the oxygen that is being produced in excess, that has to be removed. So to do that, degassing is done. Next, another problem is depletion of carbon dioxide. In open ponds, this was never a problem because it is open. There is a lot of CO2 in the environment. Algae over there are getting constant ready supply of CO2. But here in closed photobioreactor, what is happening? Algal cells are using the CO2, and at one point of time, if you are not replenishing it, the CO2 gets depleted. This can cause carbon starvation and an increase in pH. Therefore, carbon dioxide must be fed into the system in order to successfully cultivate the microalgae on a large scale. So this has to be kept in mind that if CO2 is depleting, CO2 is becoming less, what will happen? This will increase the pH of the medium, and what will happen? The cells will start starving. There will be carbon starvation. This will not allow the healthy growth of algae. Now, after growing this, what comes is harvesting. Microalgae biomass needs to be harvested for further processing. Now, just producing the biomass is not enough. That has to be harvested following proper rule, and then it has to be processed. The commonly used harvest method is through gravity settlement or centrifuge. Now, after doing after following these techniques, what will happen? The oil from the biomass will be removed through solvent extraction and further processed into biodiesel. So this is how the entire process works to give us biodiesel or eco-friendly fuel. So this was our brief discussion about how you produce algal biofuel, how important it is to produce, and how is it beneficial for sustainable development. So this is all from my end for the time being. Stay tuned for many more such interesting topics. Till then, thank you so much for your attention. If you have any confusion, any doubt, please feel free to get back to me in the comment section. I will try my best to clear your doubts and confusion. Till then, happy learning and goodbye.